Hey guys, welcome back to Sports with Mono and Mono. I'm Jim, and again apologize. My partner can't make it this week, but he sends his regards, and he'll be back with us next week for sure. So it's October 9th, 2020, 7, 8 months into the pandemic, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's in the rearview mirror yet, but it certainly shall be soon. But in the meantime, sports is carrying on, and we'll get to some of the trials and tribulations of that as we go along. But listen, we're going to talk about the Major League Baseball playoffs. We're going to start that first. And our first segment, of course, is sponsored by Coriano Trucking of Haverstraw, New York, and a longtime sponsor of the show. So the Major League Baseball players are underway, and we got 3 out of the 4. We got Game 5 tonight. The Yankees. I got to tell you, my first impression was that, starting Davy Garcia in the second game, a little questionable. Young kid, inexperienced, not a young phenom, like a Dwight Gooden and so forth. So it was a questionable move. Lucky that they survived, and they're going to see another day, and that's Game 5 tonight. And hopefully, who I think is the best pitcher in baseball, Gerrit Cole, and he's taking the ball on a 3-day rest, but it's imperative that he's the guy that you need to go to, and they're going to win or die with him. So that's the right move. The Yankees. Something interesting about the Yankees. Giancarlo Stanton starting to hit, right? But my first impression was why would anybody throw a curveball, or why would anybody throw anything other than a curveball to him? Because he can't hit a curveball. So, I kind of think the onus goes on Kevin Cash for that, for serving up these fastballs right down the middle, and he's hot enough that he's going to capitalize on it. But you can't throw him anything other than a curveball, and it's got to be off the plate because he'll go fishing for it. But right now he's on a tear, and he's hitting some monster home runs. And Game 5, it should be interesting tonight against the Tampa Bay Rays. These two teams don't like each other, so it should be intense. But the other 3 series are pretty much done. We talked last week about the Atlanta Braves. A lot of good young talent. And I didn't realize that it's been a while. It's been since they've been in the championship series. I talked about what a great organization they are, but they haven't been in the championship series in close to 20 years. So, but they got a lot of young, good talent on that team. And, that's going to be a great series against the Dodgers, because the Dodgers, they really took care of business. They swept the San Diego Padres. And again, we talked about if Clayton Kershaw is the Clayton Kershaw we know he is, he's the only thing that could, his pitching performance, if he dominates like he can, I think the Dodgers can win that series. But it's going to go at least 6 games, because the Braves have such a potent offense. But the Dodgers, they've been, probably one of the best teams in baseball the past 3-4 years, but they keep coming up short. But with Mookie Betts on the team this year, I think that's a fundamental difference between the previous losses they suffered in the World Series. So the Dodgers and Braves, it's all set for the National League. And that should be a great, great series. There's a lot of great talent on that field. And, I'm happy to see Mookie Betts get a chance to play, in the Fall Classic, and give everybody a chance to see what kind of a player he is and what the Boston Red Sox basically gave up. And still scratching my head about, how they could let him go. But because he's a great, dynamic player, and looking forward to watching the Dodgers and the Braves as they embark see who's going to play in the Fall Classic. And again, with the World Series, a 60-game season, it's basically a tournament, but I think we got the right teams in there. So the Yankees, we're going to find out whether or not they're going to be playing in the championship series, and they're going to be playing against the Houston Astros. And the Houston Astros, like I said, there's a lot of ill feelings toward them over their 2017 championship and the cheating scandal and so forth. But overall, they have they have a great team. So they're not going anywhere, and looking forward to seeing whether it's the Yankees or the Rays, but they're going to be playing the Houston Astros, and Dusty Baker's done a pretty good job holding that team together through all the adversity, and they're hitting. So we know that they're loaded with talent. I don't think they need to be cheating to be effective, but like I said, their championship is always going to be tainted by that. But that should be a great series to watch as well, whether it's the Yankees or the Rays, and that's going to happen. That's going to happen, and we'll know by probably by midnight tonight who they're going to play in the American League Series. So again, from a historical perspective, we'd love to see the Yankees-Dodgers because it's got such a great history of World Series play. But like I said, you don't know in a winner-take-all series, winner-take-all game tonight against Tampa Bay could go either way. So we're going to find out who's going to be playing in the championship series, and it's going to be a good World Series regardless of who makes it. So a lot of other sports, and again, like I said, certainly from a COVID perspective, baseball's done a good job. There hasn't really been much since the early start of the season, but we're gonna be looking forward to some really good baseball down the stretch, and kind of put in the back of my mind that it's only a 60-game season. It's like I said before, it's more of a tournament, but baseball has been exciting, and baseball's done a good job keeping these guys safe from having to delay games. And unfortunately, and we'll talk about that in our next segment about the NFL, because the NFL is going through some challenges right now. And we'll talk about the NFL after we mention our sponsor, Lynch Toyota of Manchester, Connecticut, and again, loyal sponsor of the show, and we certainly do thank them. So the NFL has been having a little bit of challenges as far as this coronavirus goes. They're not playing in this bubble environment. They're playing in front of empty stands. But, the Titans have kind of gotten hit pretty hard by this pandemic. So it's caused a lot of shuffling of the schedules from the NFL's perspective. But, they're going to get these games in. But it hasn't been as smooth transition to regular season play like baseball has, and so forth. But so they're going to move the Patriots game because they got hit. So a couple other teams have been affected by the coronavirus, but the NFL doing their best. They certainly do want to play in front of fans. I think Miami has been given the clearance to allow fans to play and so forth. So you never know. But as far as the season goes, you got to look at Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, and not so much as a surprise, but I mean, he's playing at his Hall of Fame level, and that's good to see, because I know the drafting of Jordan Love was kind of rocked the Packers and kind of threw Aaron Rodgers into a tizzy, but he's a Hall of Fame quarterback, and he's playing. So the NFL, it's getting there. There was a game last night. Nick Foles finally replaced Mitch Trubisky in Chicago. I don't know what took so long, but that guy's been a proven winner. So he did upset Tom Brady and the Bucs, and my initial thought about Tom Brady and the Bucs, as soon as he went to Tampa Bay, they pretty much designated that they're going to the Super Bowl. Well, I don't think they have the talent across the board. I think Tom Brady's still Tom Brady. Made a mental mistake in the game last night. thinking it was third down when it was fourth down to end the game. But they're a good football team, but are they a Super Bowl caliber team? I'm not so sure. And we talked about, our feelings about Russell Wilson and Seattle. They're a really, really good football team, and he's a great, great football player. So you can't dismiss Russell Wilson. It's like I said, you don't bet against him, just like you don't bet against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. They, in fact, seem to be the class of the league right now, and they're going to be a tough team to beat, and they're the reigning champions, and they're going to have to be knocked off, and I just don't see anybody in the AFC that could do that. So I look for them down the road to go to the Super Bowl, but I think the NFC, that's still up for grabs. A lot of personnel moves. It looks like the Washington football team has kind of realized that maybe Dwayne Haskins is not the kind of player that they thought he was going to be. And, Ron Rivera took the steps he's going to replace him. And he's going to replace him with somebody that he knows. He coached in Carolina, Kyle Allen. I haven't seen him win at a level where he could turn that team around. But I think from the Washington football team perspective, again, the fact that even Alex Smith made the team, now he's the backup, that's a great feel-good story. And because I mentioned it before, such a devastating injury, and the fact that he was even able to come back and make an NFL roster is one of the great stories in the NFL in many, many years. And if Kyle Allen falters, you look for Alex Smith, and you can't help but root for this guy. He's a fighter, and he was a really great quarterback, I thought, before that devastating injury. But so the Washington Redskins, there I go. And again, it's going to take some getting used to. But, from a football perspective in New York, it's ugly, right? And now Sam Darnold's hurt, so now Joe Flacco takes over the reins. And I think we know this isn't the Joe Flacco of his prime, so I certainly don't think he's going to take any drastic steps to turning that franchise around. And Darnold should miss maybe a week or two, but the New York Jets, they're in terrible shape. There's not a lot of talent on that field, and that's tough on Jet fans. From a Giants perspective, again, they look just as bad. Right, the whole NFC East does, in fact. But I'm not going to jump off the Daniel Jones bandwagon. I like him. He's still young. This is only his second year as opposed to Darnold's third. And as far as the Giants go, I think they got to be pretty pleased with Andrew Thomas, their number one draft pick, on a terrible offensive line. He's shown that he's going to be a player in this league, and left tackles are hard to find, but I've been pretty impressed with his ability to hang in there and do his job. So that's been a bright spot, and you got to give Dave Gettleman some credit here. I mean, picking a left tackle to be the anchor of your offensive line is a big risk in the NFL draft, but I really think this kid Andrew Thomas is gonna pan out. And on the defensive side of the ball I do think they have a very, very good offensive line. I really like Dexter Lawrence, really starting to come into his own. So that's going to be a bright spot. But right now, the whole defense itself, outside of Blake Martinez, free agent they got from Green Bay, he's been a bright spot on the defense. But overall, football in New York hasn't been great. It has not been great. And we mentioned the NFC East. The Dallas Cowboys. I mean, their offense is putting up big numbers, so this is good for Dak Prescott, and it's going to make Jerry Jones do some thinking. But Dak's having a great year, but the defense is just giving up more points than they're scoring, and that's certainly a recipe for disaster. But they do have a game against the Giants this week, and I don't see there's any reason why they shouldn't take care of business. But again, I thought that last week against Cleveland, and I was very surprised. But Dallas giving up that many points. And the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'll mention them again in a minute when I talk about our picks. But I think they're lucky there's no fans in Philadelphia because they'd be calling for Carson Wentz's head. He's been, they gave him a lot of money, and he's just not producing at the level they expected. And the Philadelphia Eagles, they're not going anywhere. So I mean, it's conceivable that the winner of the NFC East could possibly, at most, win 8, possibly 9 games if the Cowboys turn it around. So there's a lot going on as far as mediocrity, and certainly in the NFC. And I'd like to mention, the weekly picks from Sports with Mono and Mono. And again, you can come after me because I certainly, last week the Cowboys were one of my picks, and I used the term lock, and I'm not going to use that as much as I used to be quite honest with you. But I like Kansas City. Again, Kansas City, until somebody can really step up to the plate and challenge them, they should have an easy win over the Las Vegas Raiders. And again, that's hard to even bring up because the Los Angeles Raiders, something we've grown accustomed to from the Oakland Raiders, and now they're in Las Vegas. But I've said it time and time again. I mean, they're paying David Carr a lot of money. I just don't think he's the answer for that. I don't think John Gruden thinks he's the answer for that. And now they're in this new stadium, and Gruden's not going to have a lot of patience if he doesn't start winning football games. And my other team should have an easy time. And again, we talked about the Eagles. They shouldn't be a match against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a solid football team. Looks like Roethlisberger is back. I mean, I know he's getting toward the twilight of his career for sure, but he's playing at a level that they're a pretty good football team, and they should have a pretty easy time of it. But hopefully we don't have a coronavirus pandemic sweep across the NFL to the point where games have to be canceled. So, but we got to keep an eye on it because, the Tennessee Titans got hit pretty hard. There's been some players on the Las Vegas Raiders and the New England Patriots. Cam got affected. But you got to look for, do not discount the New England Patriots. I don't think they could challenge the Kansas City Chiefs, but Bill Belichick has been known to, and we've talked about it, he's not a lovable guy, but he does produce, and he's got an unbelievable Hall of Fame record. So, but the NFL is, week 5, and we're looking forward to it. And again, hopefully this pandemic situation doesn't cause a major disruption. And I think they're going to have to stay without fans for a little bit longer. So let's move on real quick to the NBA, because we talked about it last week. And I think it was a foregone conclusion that the Lakers were going to win this championship. And it looks like with the injuries that the Miami Heat, I still don't think that was going to be the determining factor. I think the Lakers are still, with LeBron James and Anthony Davis playing at the level he is, and they're going to be wearing their Black Mamba jerseys tonight in honor of Kobe Bryant. So they're 4-0, and I look for them to be 5-0, and they should wrap up that series tonight. I just think it was a foregone conclusion. I think LeBron James knew exactly what he needed, and he's going to cement his legacy. He's 3-6 in NBA Finals, so they're going to be 4. He's going to be 4-6 after tonight. I think they wrap it up tonight. I don't even see it going to a Game 6. But the Lakers and then the legacy of the Los Angeles Lakers will go on, and I think the whole motivation is the Kobe Bryant passing, but they're really good. So they're a good team, but with Davis and his determination and LeBron James's his ultimate goal to win this championship, I think it's going to happen tonight. So I look for them to wrap that up. And I don't think there needs to be any more said. I think, again, the bubble concept in the NBA worked out very, very well. No pandemic and no spreading of this in the bubble scenario. So, again, Adam Silver did a pretty good job of this. I know he's a marketing guy more than a commissioner. I still think LeBron James is the pseudo commissioner of the NBA, but look for them to wrap that up and move on. And before we move out of the professional basketball ranks, I think something needs to be said about the WNBA. And we don't touch on this very often, but the Seattle team, they won the championship. And you got to give a shout out, and I'm going to give a shout out because she's got an unbelievable resume. Is this Sue Bird? She wins wherever she goes. She's a veteran. She's won gold medals. She's won NCAAs, and she's won. I think this was her 4th championship in the WNBA. And what a player she is! She really is a leader. I liken her to kind of Sidney Crosby. Right? At every level where he goes. He won in junior hockey. He's won in the Olympics. He's won Stanley Cups in the NHL. And it's just, what a player she is. And, having Breanna Stewart on that team, I haven't watched a ton of it, but I've watched enough to know that Breanna Stewart is a great, great basketball player. I mean, she can shoot the ball. She can drive. She can do everything. And I wanted to give a shout out to them. Like I said, I don't know how big the following is for the WNBA, but when you see a marquee player like a Sue Bird and the resume that she brings to the table, I congratulate them wholeheartedly for, winning the title and just continuing to show that, that kind of a player is hard to find. And I think she's good for the WNBA, but I wanted to make sure we gave a shout out to them. So let's move on real quick. There's not, like I said, the Stanley Cup. We talked about the Tampa Bay Lightning winning the Stanley Cup, but there was the NHL draft, and we talked about the Rangers and their rebuilding, and I really like what David Quinn is doing, and they had the number 1 pick, and they picked Alexis Lafreniere, which, when you talk about a number 1 pick, I don't think there's been this much buzz since Sidney Crosby was coming into the league. And this, if there's anything turned as a can't miss, it's this kid. And he's excited and to be playing for the Rangers. And this is going to get the Rangers back into competitive state. So what a great pick. But a young kid, but I really look forward to seeing if he has the promise like Crosby did when he came into the league and fulfilled that promise. Sid the kid's been a little bit decimated by some injuries, but overall, what a great player. And I'm hoping this guy could turn it around for the Rangers because it's good for the NHL to have the Rangers be competitive, and they really haven't been competitive for a while. But the rebuilding program is clearly underway, and it's in pretty good shape. It's in pretty good shape. So listen, I wanted to also mention that college football is back in the swing of things, and college football, they haven't been immune to this coronavirus. So Notre Dame got hit pretty hard. They're back in action this week. And they haven't been in action in a few weeks. So, they're playing Florida State. And to put college football in a perspective and Florida State, I saw they got crushed by Miami a few weeks ago. So they're 21-point underdogs against Notre Dame. I don't know that Notre Dame can cover that 21. I haven't seen enough of Notre Dame to know whether or not they're for real. But, when was the last time you saw Florida State be a 21-point underdog to anybody? So that shows that their program's been kind of in disarray. But Clemson, moves on. They're awesome, but there have been some big upsets so far. I can't remember the last time Oklahoma lost 2 football games in the start of a season. But, so, the Alabama teams and so forth, they're where they're supposed to be. They're going to be in the top, 4 teams to make the football playoffs this year. But like I said, it's been a challenge for the college football players. I think latest coach, Les Miles, came down with it. The Florida State coach had it. So they got some challenges too. But hopefully this will all pass, and we'll get back to some of the marquee games that mean something to college football fans. Looking forward to it. And again, Notre Dame back. Haven't seen them play in a while. But it's been certainly a different season for college football. And I'm going to look forward to seeing how that starts to develop. I also wanted to stay with football for a moment because we talked last week about high school football and how awesome it is. And I was talking with a coach, one of the high school coaches of one of the premier teams, St. Joe's, and I mentioned they were playing Bergen Catholic. And I must say, the Bergen Catholic team had some just gigantic players on that field. It's really amazing how these high school kids are playing at this level of 290 to 310 pounds. But what a big football team. And they are a team to be reckoned with, certainly. I think they're going to be the number 1-2 team in New Jersey. Right now, St. Peter's Prep in Jersey City, New Jersey, and Rich Hanson's final year. But the talent level, I was talking to one of the coaches saying, there's probably 12 to 13 Division I players on Bergen Catholic. St. Joe's will have their team, a few players on that. But, to have a high school football team, I liken them to IMG Academy down in Florida. If you look at them, that's a little bit different. It's not your traditional high school. It's certainly for the elite talent. But you look at their resume and how many players they send to Division I, up to 15 Division I players in high school football, and it's great to see. And, it's just great to see that New Jersey is now on par with the California, the Florida, the Texases, and so forth as far as talent goes. It's really fun to watch and really look forward to high school football week after week. And it's really great to see. And that speaks, volumes for, the talent that they have and the coaching in these states and to produce these players. And, there's just a lot of NFL players that are playing in high school that are going to be NFL players down the road, and it's really great to see. And before we end up moving off of football, I wanted to give a shout out to my nephew, Sean, who had his first interception in his first game. He plays for Ramapo High School in New Jersey. The varsity team is a 28-game winning streak, so there's a lot of talent even on the public level. And I wanted to give a shout out to Sean. Congratulations on your first interception, and looking forward to a great career at Ramapo. So that pretty much wraps it up for football. It's getting back to where we like it, and it's exciting to see. So before we move to wrap up the show, I wanted to certainly mention, because one of our listeners, Mike, down in Naples, Florida, says you're not bringing enough about tennis. Well, the French Open is underway, and right now it looks as though we're going to see the final that we wanted to see, right? Novak Djokovic versus Rafael Nadal. And I wanted to mention Nadal because his record at the French Open, he's got 12 titles already. It looks like he's currently playing right now in the semis, but should have an easier time with Diego Schwartzman. But it looks like that's going to be the final we're going to see. So, Mike, we're watching that too. And but Nadal's record is like 102-2. So he's played in 14, this being his 15th, but 14, 12 titles. Talk about dominance on the clay surface. It's amazing to watch. And it's been really great to see this guy play at a level for so long. Yes, we miss Roger Federer in this tournament because he's been battling injuries, but we know that career is coming. Djokovic is, you know, one of the more dominating top three players between Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic. But you know, these guys are getting a little bit long in their careers. I think it's starting to affect Roger more than anybody else. But the determination of Rafael Nadal and his dominance on sports is great. On the women's side, Sofia Kenin, you know, from the United States, and we've said it week after week when we do talk about tennis that the women's is wide open, and Serena and Venus and these guys, they're no longer dominating year after year after year. So there's a lot of new talent, and we wish Sofia Kenin best of luck in the French Open final. And it's been exciting to see. So if you get a chance, you know, watch some tennis. It's great to see, and it's just great to see such a dominating player like Nadal. And I don't see him even losing to Djokovic in the final. That's how dominating on clay he has been year after year after year. But listen, I wanted to just finally mention our last sponsor is De Filippi's Bakery of Monticello, New York. And again, we hope they're doing well. They've been doing a lot of good work for the community during this pandemic and so forth. And we certainly thank them and appreciate their sponsorship on the show. So we normally end with some notables, and I wanted a couple of notables that certainly are worth mentioning. First of all, from the music business, Johnny Nash, and I think you all are familiar with "I Can See Clearly." It was a great song, you know, his biggest hit in his career. But you know, he was one of the first guys in music to take to the reggae style of music, and he had a great voice. He was a great musician, and you know, he really brought reggae to the front. You know, and I think he even signed Bob Marley to one of Bob Marley's first contracts, and brought reggae to the forefront in the music business. And Johnny Nash, like I said, he was a classy guy, and he passed away at age 80. But as far as music goes, there was what you could technically call an icon, right? Edward Van Halen. And, you know, you hear a lot of people talk about the great guitar players of all time. You can't not have him in there. And he passed away from cancer. He had a long battle with cancer. A founding member of Van Halen group. And just from a notable perspective, Van Halen was my first concert I ever saw, and they only had one album out at the time. This was 1978 at the Palladium in New York City. And that really made me aware of, you know, what kind of a guitar player this was. So he was very influential to a lot of young guitar players. But when you talk about putting him, you know, in a category with Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page, you know, it doesn't get much higher than that. And Eddie Van Halen passed away this week. And R.I.P., my friend. Great musician. But before we sign off, there was one other, and it would have been John Lennon's 80th birthday this week. And we know the tragedy surrounding, you know, his death, and, you know, how that possibly changed the music industry for forever, right? You know, the domination of the Beatles and so forth. And, you know, but he would be 80 years old this week, and certainly wanted to mention that because John Lennon, you know, from a figure in music, you know, was undeniable. And, you know, that tragedy and, you know, him getting gunned down in New York City, you know, 40 years ago was just unbelievable, shocking to the world. And he'd be 80 years old. So there's still two Beatles left, Sir Paul and Ringo. But wanted to make sure we mentioned that too. But listen, I wanted to thank everybody for joining us this week. We're doing the show a day early, so everyone can enjoy college football and Major League Baseball playoffs and the NFL season. And look forward to having my partner back with us next week. So thank you very much for joining us. And if you have any questions or comments, and we really do encourage you to send us an email. Like one of our listeners, Jim Wall, sent us a great email yesterday. We'd love to hear if you disagree or you have some other thoughts or any other topics you want to bring up. Send us an email at sportswithmanoandmano@gmail.com, and we'll certainly get back to you, and we'll talk about it on the following show. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy your week, and it's great to have sports back, and it's great to have you guys listening to us, and we thank you very much. So enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks.